The greatest moments of our intimacy with the Lord came in our hardest financial seasons.
Tithing's a check. It's a financial check for us to make sure that we're not falling into the love of money.
The Lord rebuked me for not sharing our story.
If I increase a tithe, I have found that I do get spiritually attacked more.
Trust that when you give, that you're giving to the Lord, and let it be that.
People don't trust that the church will manage the money appropriately.
That's not my problem. The problem is there's so many in the church who don't talk about this.
He doesn't need our money.
Yeah.
He needs our obedience. See, we did it.
Yeah, it wasn't that hard.
Well, I'm going to try to say your name.
Yeah.
We've got a wager, right? I get a sticker.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Free sticker pack.
Okay.
Or a pack of baseball cards, whatever you prefer.
Okay. Bob, I'm going to stick with it. Bob Lotich.
Nope. You want to try again?
Lotich.
Nope.
Lotich.
Keep going.
You need to tell me your last name.
It's Lotich.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten
So
there.
it's German and it's got that in
So
it.
Bob Lotich.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Seed of King podcast.
Man, it's an honor to be here. I'm excited to chat.
Thank you, man. We treat this as a live podcast just from our initial conversation. Like, I'm excited to learn because I think this is going to be a fun one.
I hope so.
So
Let's do it.
I'm looking forward to it. And when we were talking about topics of what's on your heart, you hit with a really good topic.
Yeah.
I'd love you to introduce the topic, what we're talking about today, if you're up for it.
Okay, which is what?
Gosh, man, what you hit with what set off the Dunkometer. Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Jog my memory. What did I just say?
Affecting people long-term versus near-term. I'll simplify it. Does that help you?
I am crickets in my brain. I don't remember.
Well,
Connect the dots.
I'll talk about it, right? Is you're talking about how you just shot a podcast like a week ago.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of struck on your heart,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, all right.
You
So,
got it?
yeah. Okay. So here's what we were talking about. The idea of, and this is a revelation to me, we were shooting a podcast, my wife and I, and we were taking a long time to really feel like we were getting in the flow. And then we got in that sweet spot where you can just sense God's presence. You can sense the Lord's anointing on what's happening, right? But it took a long time to get there. And I felt like the revelation I got out of that is that you have Kairos time and Chronos time. So Chronos time being on the clock, so 60 minutes, but Kairos time being a moment. Again, and this is like the extent of my Greek understanding there, but just that idea of a moment that isn't measured in minutes and something deep and rich and whatever else. And so sometimes, at the end of the day, the thing that's causing transformation, I believe, for most people is those Kairos moments. It's not that you spend 8 hours in prayer, though that's good, but like to have that one moment where the Holy Spirit moves on you while you're praying, like that's the thing where God can shift something so suddenly in your life, right? So my point out of all of this was just that with the podcast, it dawned on me that sometimes you have to go for a while until you get to that moment, but that doesn't make it wasted because that one single Kairos moment in the podcast or the conversation or whatever else can change someone's life forever, right?
Yeah. So it's the journey, right, of climbing a mountain that you put in all the work to climb the mountain for that aha moment at the top.
Yeah, if that's the thing that changes it. But like climbing to the 90% up and never getting there, might not change your life. But we can trust that the Lord's going to direct this conversation, every other conversation we have to get to that point.
Yeah.
For each person.
Well, there's a lot to dissect and unload there, right? I've worked my entire life and finally one moment of success is what's led somebody to Christ, right? There's failures along the way that can lead people to Christ. There's success and failures along the way in the micro stage, I guess, to get to that macro stage that will grow your own personal faith. I mean, there's a lot of places we can go, right? So where do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about finances, if we are going to talk about in this podcast, which is what we do, I see that all the time with finances too. You know what I mean? Like, I think in its simplest form, like oftentimes when you are going down this journey of whether it's paying off debt, and again, I'll speak from our situation, we had a whole bunch of debt we were trying to pay off. In multiple points in there, the Lord stepped in and got involved. But like we had sometimes years of working, doing the little thing over and over and over again and feeling like we're not making much progress. And then the Lord just breathes. And then all of a sudden it's like the wind is at your back going downhill on roller skates. And it's like, okay, now we're moving, now we're cooking, you know? And And we just actually had Mark Batterson on our podcast recently. He just released this book called, what is it? Gradually, Then Suddenly. And I love that title because it's
Wow.
like you see God move like that so often, where there are so many things where it's gradually and just slow and slow and slow. But then there's those suddenly moments with God where it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't make sense how fast it worked,
Yeah. Yeah, man. Okay. So, it reminds me of quicksand, right?
I've never
The,
been in quicksand.
let's the theory
Yeah.
is I haven't either, but the deeper you get in, the more you struggle and the more you
Yeah.
fight on your own, the further you sink
Yeah.
instead of letting God do the work for you.
Yeah.
Right. And it comes down to patience,
Mm-hmm.
and it reminds me of, and this is one of my favorite passages in Exodus, when the angel comes on explaining of, I'm going to take you to the promised land,
Yeah.
but I'm going to deliver it little by little because
Mhm.
you couldn't handle it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so in this scenario, it's very similar of gradual, little by little, but then the floodgates will open for you to receive the promised land.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I think it's similar in the financial aspect too, of you got to get all your ducks in a row financially in order to be able to accept the fruit from that.
Yeah. No, we were just talking to someone the other day who was more or less asking, how do I pray in a way that'll get God to instantly make all my debt disappear?
Wow.
That was essentially what I was getting, reading in between the lines of kind of what we were talking about. And and I get that question a lot, or that type of question, or that type of mindset, I think, in which, of course, God can do that. And, God sends checks in the mail and some of that stuff happens. And I've seen some of those miracles myself. But so often, I would say more often in my experience, God's trying to do something in and through the person rather than just fix the external circumstances. Because you have someone who, like in my case, like let's say I racked up $100,000 of debt because I don't have any control over my spending. If God magically washes that all away in one day, where am I going to be in 2 years from now? It's not going to be debt free. I'm going to be back in that hole because I didn't change the root problem, right?
Yeah.
And so often I think the Lord's like, how can I grow you, develop you in the midst of what you're doing so that, like you're saying, go little by little, take ground, and then be in a position of authority, right? And that is the thing that I've seen so much. And what I tend to try to encourage people when it is taking longer, but God's at work, he's doing something,
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, let me ask you this too, because this is a struggle I have in my faith of technically, if you have one extra dollar at the end of the day, you live in abundance.
Yeah.
Technically, right? That's a hard pill for me to swallow.
Yeah.
Because I want to control tomorrow instead of living in today. So the combination of living in today, knowing that if you have everything you need plus one, you live in abundance.
Yeah.
Right. Do you ever like struggle with that, or do you ever like contemplate that or pray over it? I mean, or do you help others with that?
Yeah. No, I think that is such a tricky thing because if you look biblically, like you see a lot of different examples of this. You see Jesus leading and encouraging his apostles. And I was just reading about this the other day, and I don't have it super clear. You can maybe correct me on some of this, but he changed his instructions with the disciples about money. So the first missionary journey, it's like, don't bring anything. And then the next one, or I guess when he was leaving, it's like, now bring something. So the mission changed, and then you look at, in Egypt, Joseph, it's like God gives Pharaoh and him through this dream, this heads up of the abundance that's coming. And then I want you to save 1/5 during this abundance because something, the famine's coming after that. And so that was obedience. And I think it's really easy to try to put on one size fits all kind of approaches to managing money. But the reality is that we all have different missions that God has sent us out to do. And so therefore we might have different orders, and we might have different orders at different seasons. And so I'll just tell you a little story about this. So my wife and I, she tithes since she was born or whatever. She grew up Christian and tithe. I didn't grow up Christian. And so it took me a while to get to the point where I'm going to start tithing. And so I began doing that probably in my mid-20s or something. And so we get married, we have tons of debt, and we start paying off credit cards and car loans and student loans, and we're kind of kicking butt. And we get to the point where I'm 31 years old. We had paid off our mortgage at this point. And I'm like, or I'm sorry, we hadn't paid off our mortgage. We had paid off all of our other debt, but that was the one thing remaining was I wanted to pay off our mortgage. Okay. And so I went out in this field, not much different than this beautiful thing we have here. And I remember praying that day to the Lord and saying, Lord, I would love to pay off our mortgage. Can you help me do that faster? And I'm a numbers nerd. And so I had a spreadsheet that in my spreadsheet, it said I only had like 3.5 years left to get that mortgage paid off, which anyone watching or listening would be like, that's amazing. I would love that,
Yeah.
but I'm like an American and I want it faster. So I'm like, how do we do this faster, Lord? And one of the clearest things he ever spoke to my heart was in that moment in the middle of that field where he said, if you really want to see me move on your finances, I want you to begin giving your age as a percentage of your income. So again, I'm 31 at that time, giving probably 10, 11% tops. And I'm scratching my head like, you are asking me to increase my give, almost triple my giving and give 31%. So I'm like doing mental math in my head, like trying to figure out, is this even possible? Like, how would that even work? Will we be able to pay the bills if we do that? And we had abundance at that point, because we had paid off all that other debt. So we had disposable income every month, and I was chucking that towards the mortgage to get it paid off as fast as possible. And so then, so I'm going through all the different cycles. And then I have this moment where I'm like, wait a minute. I just came here and asked you to help me get this paid off quicker. Yeah. And now you're telling me to give all my money away. Like, what are you doing here? And so I'm going through all this stuff and I went back and talked to my wife, Linda, maybe she'll talk some sense into me. And anyway, she like instantly just gets on board and she's like, God would not ask us to do this unless he had something really cool on the other side of it. And I'm like, you're right. So we began that month doing it and giving 31% of our income. And I went back to my spreadsheet, fixed the numbers. I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay. So now it's going to take us 10 years to pay off our mortgage. Like, thanks, God, but we began doing it out of obedience. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I felt like we were supposed to do it. So we did it one month, the next month, not much has changed. But then month 3, it's like, wow, man, business is picking up. Month 4, this huge tax refund came. The next month, something came. Like, it was just one after another, to the point that 10 months after we did that, our mortgage was paid off.
Goodness gracious.
So,
praise God for that, man.
I know. It was such a miraculous thing that we watched him do that resulted from that obedience. But I'm saying this is a long, winding road to get back to your question. So that was something that we did. We ended up following that pattern for the next 13 years. We increased our giving by 1% every year, all the way up till we were 43 years old. And anyway, a lot of people, we had told the story, a lot of people had come to know this about us. And then I felt like God said, I want you to change it. It's a new season. And so we shifted more. And he's like, I want you to start saving some more, pull back in the giving a little bit. And I fought it at first because I'm like, it's kind of like the thing. It's like, why would you tell me not to be as generous? All this stuff. But like, I felt like he was leading me to begin saving more. Now, if I am a steward, if I am a manager and he's the owner of everything, then I should obey, even if I can't see. He might be having me save that because in 2 years, he wants me to go buy a pastor a house. Like, I have no idea. But like, the point is that my job is to obey, even if I can't understand what that piece is.
That's a great analogy, man. Okay. So I'm going to dissect a lot of what you just said and go back. So with Jesus, sending him out with nothing, sending him out with something.
Yeah.
God will teach us how to learn how to live with nothing so we can handle something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's step one. And then on your journey of goodness, man, of following God. I mean, the one thing I want to point out with tithing is in Exodus, like I think it's Exodus, God clearly states he doesn't need our money. Yeah. He needs our obedience. Mm-hmm. Right. And he will do miraculous things in our life when we obey him. And then to your point of a manager, it's not our money anyway. Yeah. Right. And so we always come in, our flesh always comes into that situation of God, but like I've worked hard for this, or I've tried to make progress here. Like, why are you doing this? And it's not ours anyway. Yep. Everything we're doing, if it's truly for him, it all belongs to him. Yep. Right. So, I mean, praise God again, man, for that story, because it does show how God will go to work in ways that we just don't understand. Yeah. Right. And we also have to be clear too, like there'll be situations where our pride will come in and we get a bit ambitious of like, God, if I'm going to go ahead and increase from 10 to 20%, because then I hope that you'll see that and you'll give more to me. But that's not the way it works. Yeah. You don't make that decision. God makes that decision. Yep. right? The obligation to tithe, we need to stop treating it as an obligation and more treat it as a gift.
Yeah.
Like that. And that's a gift to us because again, God doesn't need our money, right? He needs our service and he wants our free will to serve him. Right. And financially is a massive way, with it being such a root of so many evils. To relinquish that is a true part of our freedom, right?
Well, yeah. And the first mention of tithing in the Bible was pre-law, you know, so with Abram, and it's out of worship. It's out of reverence, you know, like, and so I think that's just a beautiful way to kind of look at it. But yeah, anyway.
It's a thankfulness, submission, dedication.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, you hear a lot of people say God will come through. You know, I'm going to give the money that he's asked me to give, and you're a living testimony for that, which is tremendous.
But the point you made about turning it into a formula where it's like, okay, Bob did that, so I'm going to go do that, and I expect that God's going to pay off my house. It's like, that's when you get into this dangerous territory of like making God your genie. It's like, I had no idea that was going to happen. Like, and in fact, like, you know, again, we've had many interesting seasons and roads that the Lord's led us on, but we've had plenty of times where we started doing something out of obedience and things just got way worse, you know? And so it's not always about the result, it's about the obedience. But this just happens to be on the Sports Center highlight reel of our lives, where it's like, I just want to give him praise for what he did there, you know? And really what I want people to take from that is obey God when it seems crazy. Because and even if you don't see a breakthrough like that, the point is that God's doing something, you know? And for me, the first thing he did was destroy an idol, because I had made paying off our house an idol. And that was the thing that was more important to me than anything else. And God's like, yeah, we gotta take that out. And so he made sure that I laid that down. And and that was all part of the process.
My goodness. Well, sticking on tithing, I'm going to flat out ask you your opinion, because there is a little bit of controversy on whether you're required to tithe or
There's
not.
a lot of controversy.
I'm trying to be polite, but there. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do, of course. I very much feel like we are not under the law. That I personally don't feel like tithing is a requirement and something that we have to do. I don't think God's going to get you if you don't do it. But I do see it like so many other Old Testament principles that are just beneficial. Like, I just don't run into people who it just feels like we are under a new covenant, and as a result, like, I don't know, 2 Corinthians 9 is really like my main kind of chapter, what I come to for what does giving look like in the New Testament. And 2 Corinthians 9, great chapter. Paul's talking about giving through the metaphor of sowing and reaping. So the whole thing is about sowing and reaping and harvesting, and it sounds like it's farming lesson, but it's actually about giving. And, you know, he flat out says in there, if you sow sparingly, you're going to reap sparingly. If you sow bountifully, you're going to reap bountifully. And then he tells us to not give under compulsion. You know, he tells us to give liberally what we've decided in our heart to do. And so I believe that 10% as new covenant Christians should just be a mile marker. And God's got us on a journey. But again, like, it all comes down to hearing the direction of the Lord. And I just don't think anyone is going to go wrong tithing and giving 10%. Like, I've never heard anybody who's like, yeah, that just destroyed my life. Like, I just don't hear that, you know?
Do you, I want to think of how to ask this. I mean, I have scenarios where a giving above and beyond, I'm using quotations here, has set spiritual attack.
Has brought it on, is that what you're saying?
I mean, there's a pretty direct correlation where I've seen that to a point of like it being detrimental to people. And this is going to be a little controversial.
Tell me more. I want to hear. Yeah, I want to understand.
So there have been times in my life where I've gone above and beyond to give. You know, I've either sold a business or I've been financially rewarded, and I've gone above and beyond. And then following that, and I have a point to this, following that, I have been hammered financially. I mean, there was a scenario where there was a sale of a business. You know, I did give, and I'm trying to keep details out because I don't feel like I'm supposed to be specific about this.
That's fine.
Right. but following, there was like businesses that we had supported from a supply standpoint, in the manufacturing, and we lost millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And then there was things that there was no other explanation than a spiritual attack of like, money being taken, and I can't use a different word than taken because that's
Yeah.
literally what happened.
Yeah.
And like we went through it for like 2 or 3 years financially,
Yeah.
and it feels like it tied to that specific moment.
Mm.
And now bringing it full circle is I'm kind of talking myself in circles at this point and trying to get the words out. But
Yeah.
I definitely was spiritually attacked in that
Yeah.
moment by giving. But during that time of spiritual attack, it was a significant growth
Yeah.
for me in other fields. So I
Yeah.
guess this is a long-winded way of asking a question of, if you do tithe and it does say God has the ability to give to you and abundantly, is that financially, or could he give you abundance in other parts of your life? Because I feel like during those moments I gained, experience. I gained wisdom.
Yeah.
I got thicker skin to be able to fight better for my God.
Yeah.
Right. Does that
Yeah.
make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know the answer. I mean, I've seen both,
Mhm.
and I agree with what you're saying about the spiritual attack, but I tend to use that as like a, I don't know, canary in the coal mine type thing, where it's like, if the spiritual attack is coming, that makes me think that you're onto something.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, it's pretty easy for the enemy to just lay back when you're on a track or headed the wrong direction. Right.
Yeah.
So, I, as much as I hate it, like I do feel like that oftentimes means that you're headed in the right direction. And in some of those really hard times, like we were just, again, talking about this yesterday, my wife and I, some of the greatest moments of our intimacy with the Lord came in our hardest financial seasons,
Yeah.
to where it's like, it's hard for me to ask for that again, that
Mhm.
really hard season, but I'm also so appreciative and grateful for those moments because they drew me so close to him. And I think that's what he desires more than anything else, to just be close to us and to
Mhm.
have that connection. And if money is getting in the way of that,
Mhm.
it makes sense that he might allow something to just draw us back in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The tithing's a check.
Yeah.
Right. It's a financial check for us to make sure that we're not falling into the love of money.
Yeah.
It's a submission.
Yeah.
And what's that saying, back to your point of, if the devil's not chasing you, then you're running with him.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like a confirmation that you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And, I had this moment a few weeks ago. I was sitting with my dad, and like we had this moment of, man, when these things happen, we know it's for the greater good of our God.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's for the greater good of our God, shouldn't we be at peace with that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're his vessels anyway, and like we're here to serve him and to love him. I mean, and our job is to worship him
Yeah. Yeah.
and follow him.
Mhm.
And so if that's the case, in my mind, I need to separate my responsibilities versus the spiritual warfare, because I'm still growing in every single moment. And so I found that if I increase a tithe, or if I take a further step of a donation, or if I act boldly,
Yeah.
financially,
Yeah.
I have found that I do get spiritually attacked more.
Yeah.
But my blessing is I can then say, I've been here before and I can handle it.
Yeah.
And not only for myself, but if I see somebody else struggling, I can help them,
Yeah.
which is what the Bible says to do.
Yeah.
But I also, my job is to be a wedge between the world and my kids.
Mhm.
And so any experience I get, whether it's good or bad, I can use that as the wedge to protect my children. Like, hey, here's the wisdom I've gained because the Lord's allowed me to do this.
Yeah.
And it's straying a little bit from tithing into just spiritual attacks. But I do think it all comes hand in hand. When you act boldly for the Lord, you should expect to be boldly attacked by the enemy.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
that's where prayer comes in and submission comes in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, but it's a tremendous story because it's part of your testimony.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we're after.
Yeah.
It is the testimony to empty hell.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Well, and I'll just add another piece to that too, that I think is worth sharing. So the highlight reel piece of that, the headline of that or whatever, is we paid off our mortgage 10 months after we started doing that. Okay. That's the crazy, miraculous piece. But the thing that was, again, really impactful for me was that God helped me break down this idol that was in my life, which was great. But then the other thing that was really cool is when we committed to giving that high of a percentage every single month we're allocating this money. It's sitting in a bucket and we're sitting there, Lord, what do you want us to do with this? And I'll tell you what, giving has never been more fun in my entire life than when you have money allocated in a separate account designated to give. So it feels like you're not giving your own money anymore. It feels like you're giving someone else's money and you're on the lookout. So instead of like being so busy about your plans, and I'll speak for myself when I often was like doing my thing, and then the Lord's got to like hit me upside the head to get my attention to go give to this person over here. Now I'm like looking and scanning, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it just changed my approach to giving in such a radical way. And that was really, really fun.
Yeah, no, I like that. So the direct correlation of tithing and giving in other sections of your life.
Yeah.
Right. When you realize the money's not yours, hey, this is yours, Lord. I'm going to give the way you want me to. It does change your heart.
Yeah.
Into a giving heart, into other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And that's what we're meant to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if our Savior gave his life, we should be willing to give some money.
Yeah.
Right. To put it bluntly.
I think that's fair for salvation and everything else Jesus bought for us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the least we can do. So I'm going to ask you another question about tithing, because there's times when I hear people's testimony tied to tithing really well.
Yeah.
Like, man, I didn't have it, but I gave it anyway because I felt I was being pushed to do that. And then there's also Bible verses, right, about like, don't let the left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Yep.
So, and that you saw me struggle through what I was explaining in my situation about giving, because I don't like, that's another one of my struggles is how vocal do you be about your giving to others? Where it's your testimony versus a boast, right? And managing your words. And I'm obviously a spirit led, but like you have an encouraging testimony. But there are those who say, I tithed, I did this in a form of boast, right? Do you have thoughts on that?
I do a lot.
You're flipping through the Bible.
So there's a whole bunch of things I have thoughts on here.
You're onto something.
Okay. All right. Let me take you to another story. Is that okay?
Please.
So. When I was a young Christian, I was probably 22 years old, and I was going to this small church in South Florida, about 75 people, kind of Pentecostal church or whatever. And this one day we had this guest preacher come in, and in the middle of the service, he stops and he looks around to the 75 of us in the room, and he said, "Who here is not tithing?" Like, and then we're all just like sitting there staring at him. Like, are we supposed to answer that? You know? And then he like just waited. He's literally waiting for an answer. And then he asked again, who here is not tithing? And I'm like, this dude wants people to start raising their hands. And anyway, it was one of the most awkward moments of my life. And I remember sitting there, I'm a brand new Christian. I'm like, is this what y'all do? Is this what Christians do? Like you force each other to give money and stuff like that? And even then I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like giving if it's like, you know, but anyway, so finally two guys raised their hand like this, and then he calls them down to the front, makes them publicly repent in front of everyone, and berates them for not consistently tithing. And then they march back to their chairs. Like you can see the guilt and the shame in their eyes. And I'm like, this just feels weird, man. It's like
quickest way to not get people to come to church.
I know. And so, but anyway, my point is that like deeply impacted how I thought about giving and giving to the church and all this different stuff. And so like the Lord had to work through that with me and help me kind of just worked. And I think about those guys. I'm like, what is that like for them next time the offering bucket comes around? Like, are they giving, like 2 Corinthians says, not under compulsion, like without being pressured into it, you know? Or do they feel like, I feel like somebody's gonna hit me upside the head if I don't, you know? And so like, that is the way that I like to approach this. I don't, I'm not a big fan of the heavy-handed push giving on someone, because it doesn't feel like giving. You know what I mean? Like if you have to do it or else, like it just doesn't feel like giving anymore. And so personally, that doesn't resonate with me a whole lot. But talking about the other piece, this has been really interesting. This is something we actually had to study out a little bit. I had to get comfortable in this because when was this? Probably in 2017 or 18, the Lord rebuked me for not sharing our story and the story I told, and then a couple other stories, like significant stories like that, where he had done miracles. And I had completely hidden what he had done in our financial life, pretty much because of what you said. Like, it's like, I don't want the left hand know what the right hand's doing. It's like, we don't talk about finances. We keep that private, all this stuff. And God's like, I want you to give me glory for what I've done in your financial life. I'm like, okay. And I felt like, how do I talk about this in a way that doesn't sound weird? It doesn't sound whatever. And then literally a week after I agreed and yielded and submitted, he brought whatever, CBN 700 Club came knocking on the door and said, hey, we want to interview you. You got a testimony to share? I'm like, sure do. Here it is. Let's talk. And then it's in front of millions of people or whatever else. And then right after that, he's like, I want you to write this book, sharing your testimony, your story, and what I taught you and all this stuff. And so he first convicted me to start doing it, and then he had made us start doing it and sharing this, which I was very uncomfortable doing. So I had to like figure out scripturally, like, what's actually going on here? Is this okay? And so anyway, so what I found is that when you actually read through the Bible, there are so many examples of public giving that is not condemned. Okay. And even like, if you think about like Zacchaeus, okay, so he does all this and then he publicly announces, I'm going to, what did he say? I'm going to give back 4 times as much to anyone I defrauded, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. He publicly says what he's going to do with his giving. Jesus doesn't rebuke him. Jesus says, today salvation has come to this house.
Right.
Okay. So it doesn't hold water that this idea of like all giving you should never talk about it. Because I think that's the key. I think it's the heart posture. So it's the same thing in Matthew, 6, where he's talking about this and he's talking about prayer and he's talking about fasting. Each one of these 3 things, he's saying, don't do it in a way where you're trying to get the applause of man.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the same way with our giving. What is your heart posture behind it? Is it that you're trying to brag and trying to impress people, or are you actually trying to lead and inspire people based on your testimony of what God's doing? And so that's where I've landed, where it's like I finally have gotten comfortable sharing some of those specifics to the extent that they can inspire and encourage others. Yeah. Because I think the problem is there's so many in the church who don't talk about this. And so the next generation doesn't know what it looks like. And I am so grateful for some mentors who have shared what they've done. So for example, there was a couple at our church we used to go to, and they would buy gifts for the staff every year for Christmas. I saw their act of generosity. I'm like, that's really cool. I want to do that someday. And then we moved here, went to a different church. I'm like, all right, we're going to start doing that. So the point is, I saw their generosity, inspired me. I took action, was more generous as a result. And I think there's so much that is lost because no one talks about it.
Yeah. What a beautiful answer. That's I love that. There are a lot of examples when you say that about people who gave publicly.
Yeah.
But there's also something you said, 3 words that make the difference: for his glory.
Yep.
It's not for 100%. You, it's for his glory. Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people also that don't trust the church, that the church will manage the money appropriately. What is in your mind? This is getting fun for me, by the way. What is the cutoff between I have done my part, now it's up to the church, versus your responsibility to make sure you're giving to those who will manage it appropriately?
Do you think I have an exact answer or something?
That's why it's fun for me, because I'm like, if you do, I don't have to think of it.
Yeah, no, I don't have an answer on that. And this is where, like, I think there's so many things where it's really helpful to pray and listen to the Lord and allow him to speak and reveal things to you, and at the end of the day, I trust that when I obey the scriptures, and if the Bible says to give to those who ask of you, and I do it, and I'm sitting there in my mind thinking, well, I think he's going to go spend it on something he shouldn't. He's not going to use that money wisely. It's like, that's not my problem. Like, I'm just trying to obey what the Lord told me to do in the scriptures, And so the same way with tithing, that's how I've approached it. I think it can go too far to where you view it as a stewardship cop-out, where it's like you never have to think about who you're giving to. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think there's something for accountability of charities and organizations. And but at the end of the day, I don't know. I think some people over-optimize on that too much and try to get too far in the weeds of things that they will never fully be able to understand, versus just trust that when you give, that you're giving to the Lord, and let it be that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm giving to the Lord. And if you direct me to go somewhere else to give it, And if this isn't a church that manages money well and I need to go to a different church, like lead me and show me, you know, that's how I've approached it.
I mean, it's simplicity. I mean, prayer, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's I think personally, tithing is a simple thing made difficult by people.
Yeah.
Right. It's overthought in a lot of different scenarios where it's how much should I be giving?
Mm-hmm.
How much, like, when should I be giving? Is the church doing something right with it? You know, like, would I do better with this money than the church would do?
Yeah.
Um,
And isn't that like the enemy?
yes.
Like to just sow all these seeds of doubt
Yes.
of, well, you're not going to buy the groceries. Well, the church is going to go waste it. They're going to go buy whatever, $50,000 projector or something or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, and like that thing. But it's like God never asked us to figure all those things out. Right.
Well, that's it. We bring that on ourselves. That's why it's a simple thing,
Yeah.
you know, made difficult by us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, for some reason, I feel like this is relevant. So when I go to sleep at night, every night, and I can't remember who taught me this. It wasn't too long ago, and I feel bad that I can't tell you who taught me this, but I envision myself opening up a door,
Yeah.
and walking into the crown room, right?
Yeah.
Jesus, and then a God that I can't see, and I bring my questions to him.
This is every night when you go to bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically I enter the room and I'm like, God, like, here's what I'm struggling with. Like, Jesus, and this is what I need help with.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is where I feel like I'm failing, or I just need forgiveness tonight.
Yeah.
Right. And tithing is one of those things. Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do financially?
Yeah.
Like, can you guide me? Can you make sure my intentions are right?
Yeah.
And I literally envision doors. I envision a round room. I envision the right hand of the throne. And I envision, you know, a God big enough that I can't see.
Yeah.
And I have that conversation, you know, and it's amazing in that meditation, the financial comfort you get of knowing it's not yours, knowing it's his. And, you know, in my business, you know, we do a lot of transactions, you know, on investments, on sales. And that's a tough road to go down because I get caught up a lot of like, if I can sell it for this, then I can give this.
Yeah.
Instead of, is this what you want me to do, Lord?
Yeah.
Like, do you want me to do this? And then what do you want me to do with it? And initiating the submission before the sale has even happened.
Yeah.
Right. And that at night, gosh, man, I really wish I could give them credit because it's impacted my life substantially.
Yeah.
And hey, I've even gone to God, you know, my finances, you look at this deal on the table. What do you want?
Yeah.
You know, and it's brought a lot of peace because God looks at your heart. He looks at the intention, and my intentions are to try to serve the Lord. And it's a regulator for me every night of, God, this is where I think I failed. This is where I think I succeeded. Can you tell me if I'm right? And can you tell me what to do in these scenarios?
Yeah. Well, and what you're describing, I think, is a perfect illustration of serving God and not serving mammon.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what it is. Because I think so often, I mean, serving the mammon thing is so prevalent throughout all of our society, even Christian society. Like it's just everywhere. And it's so easy to make decisions based on money. It's like, how much are they going to pay you to buy out your company? All right. That's enough money. Therefore, I'm going to do it. It's like, well, all right, what does the Lord have for you to do? Right. And then one other thing I was just thinking about just for you with that, because I think, again, when you view this as management, God being the owner of it all, and you just being a manager, it's easy to think through the lens of, well, I guess I'll say this, like you selling off companies, you know, because I think about Elon Musk, okay, sells off PayPal, walks away with, I don't know, 80 million or something like that. He takes all of that and reinvests it into SpaceX. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, obviously not a believer. He's not doing this for the kingdom, but that principle behind that money he needed as seed to start the thing that really is going to make a big deal. Right. And if he would have given all of that away, or even half of that, because SpaceX were 3 rocket launches, the first 2 failed. If that 3rd rocket wouldn't have gone up, SpaceX might not exist. Right. You know, so like he needed that money to do this job. And I think in your case, or maybe in other people in similar situations, it's like that might be what God has for you to do. Mm-hmm. And so maybe he doesn't want you to give 50% of it away or whatever. It's like, I want you to sit as a saving account for a couple of years. I have stuff for you to do in a little bit. So just be ready, be willing to be obedient, you know? And I think so many people miss that.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I like that.
And it's hard because a lot of people will judge that.
Yeah.
and they'll point fingers at you. And I just saw someone yesterday pointing fingers at Elon Musk. You're so rich. You should go do all this, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that's not our role.
Yeah.
That's between him and God.
It's amazing too, the people that give and get attacked for giving.
Yeah.
And then again, it goes back to, you're under a spiritual attack when you're doing it for the right reasons. Yeah. And that's typically when it's a Psalm 91 situation, right? A fiery dart of when you give, if you truly are giving for the Lord, it gives you peace. You feel joy because you're doing it for the right reasons. But in your joy, you're going to get some fiery darts shot at you.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to get your joy, your peace taken away. You're going to, the enemy's going to try to introduce doubt. And it just proves you can never let your guard down. And the armor of God is always worn.
Yeah.
But it shows you're on the right track. Like, I just want to repeat that.
Yeah. So agreed.
Oh man. Is there anything else in your story that you haven't shared? Because it's a great story, right? And it's not over.
Yeah.
We're sitting here talking. So your story's not over from the financial standpoint, but like after can you talk me through, you paid off your mortgage.
Yeah.
Right. And you said that God's led you into another season. Yeah. Can you talk about your current season a little bit financially? Do you mind?
So one of the things that, and again, this isn't prescriptive for everyone watching or listening, but like for me, I felt like the Lord brought me back to Joseph in Egypt and the idea of saving 20%. And again, I'm doing this under his direction. Because again, we actually did a whole podcast episode talking about how when we shift and how hard it was almost harder to stop doing the giving your age as a percentage thing than it was to start, because our identity had become wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
And which is maybe why he wanted to change it. I don't really know. But the point is, so what we've shifted to is like right now we're giving 25% of our income and we're saving 20% of what comes in. And which is the whole thing, like, again, this is another thing worth sharing. The whole thing, when we started that at age 31, it was so perfectly from God because it created the perfect amount of friction and tension for us. Because prior to that, we just had too much, right? Like I said, we had paid off all of our other debt. And so when all you have is a mortgage each month, like it's just, and then the electric bill or whatever, like even a decent income, like you have a good amount extra. And then when you pay the mortgage off, you really have some extra. And so the point is that we had too much margin to where I wasn't saying no to myself enough. And I think that's a really healthy thing to always have to say no to yourself about something, right? And so out of all that, it was just like perfect tension where we didn't have too much, where we didn't have to depend on God, but we also had enough. We had our needs covered. And it was just like wisdom and in his wisdom, like kind of taking us through that season. And so anyway, so this season we're in now still have a good amount of tension in that, an appropriate amount, right? Where it's not too much, not too little. And anyway, so back to the 20% thing, we've just sensed the Lord kind of lead us like Joseph for preparing for whatever's down the road around the corner. Like, let's just be real. We have no idea what's going to happen these next few years with the AI world and everything else that's going on. Like the world could look so radically different in 5 years and we have no idea.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so part of that is just a little bit of a preparation thing that I'm sensing. But ultimately it's just out of obedience. It's not about, storing up barns and we eat, drink, and be merry. Like it's just about obeying the Lord, and it's his money, and whatever he says, when he says jump, when he says go, when he says give, we're, by his grace going to be quick to do it. But that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay. That led me to think this is going to be a very open-ended question.
Yeah.
What do you think of the term financial freedom?
Yeah. So a lot. So we actually have a video-based curriculum for churches that we call True Financial Freedom. And the reason we do that is because financial freedom is ambiguous, has a lot of different terms, but generally speaking, the world defines it, as either being financially independent, having $1 million by X number or 10 million, or living the 4-hour work week or whatever, any variant thereof. Right. But true financial freedom, I believe, it's not about the amount of money in your bank account. It's about really what Paul talks about in Philippians 4, about learning the secret, he says, of how to be content and how to abase and abound and how to live in the high times and low times. And so He lived in dungeons, but he also lived in the king's palace. And so he saw some of both. And he was able to, it said he learned how to be content in that. Right. And so that is the freedom that I think all of us actually really want, because I know super wealthy people who are miserable. I know super poor people who are miserable. And when your money or your trust is in your money, it doesn't matter how much you have. It's never going to be enough. It's never going to satisfy. It's never going to yield the fruit that you think it is. But when you learn how to be content in him as your provider, no matter how much or how little is there, that is freedom.
Yes. Yeah. Man, well, this has been awesome, man. Like, I've really enjoyed this. You've hit me with a lot of wisdom, and I'm thankful for that.
Awesome. Same here.
Goodness, man. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want me to ask you?
Oh, great question. Boxers or briefs? Like, I don't. No.
You can want me to ask you that. I'm not going to ask you.
Okay.
At least not on camera.
Yeah. I don't know. Nothing comes to mind. I think you've asked some great questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I mean, the experience speaks volumes, and what God's put on your heart and what God's allowed you to accomplish. I think it's a great testimony.
Yeah. He's done some work, man. Like, because I didn't, and this is one of those things we were talking about before. Like, when you see where I was and you see, how he's moved us forward, progressed us, and mostly heart stuff, not necessarily financially, but it's just amazing. And God gets all the glory, because it's like, I was such a mess in so many ways. And he's good at doing work, when you yield to him. And yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
and out of his many names, he's also the ultimate trash man, cleaning up our trash every day. He's the ultimate janitor. And the thing is, he would never be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
He wants to help us and clean that up. So,
which is so beautiful.
From a financial standpoint, from an action standpoint, from a faith standpoint, like, he's there as our savior in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
And I think people, including myself at times, think he lets us go financially while he's there for us spiritually. But financially, as we've seen through the Old Testament and New Testament, it is a spiritual battle.
Yep.
Right. And he is there for us from a spiritual standpoint.
Yep.
While our soul and flesh may suffer, our spirits with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the level of contentment and financial freedom that we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I know I didn't say your name right the first 2 to 3 times.
But you were so close.
Well, I mean, I knew it started with an L.
Yeah.
L. But Bob
L. Lotich. You got it.
Yeah. Man. Well, I thank you for your time. And I know we're going to keep talking.
Yeah, let's do it. It was an honor. Thanks for having me on.